and he proclaims, "Lady, you shot me," and she proceeds to beat him until he collapses.
Can you handle the truth? Step into the world of music's darkest mysteries as we uncover the chilling stories behind the untimely deaths of 20 iconic musicians. Brace yourself for a journey through fame, tragedy, and unsolved mysteries. 20. John Lennon. Little did John Lennon know that signing an album for a fan would seal his fate forever. John Lennon, born on October 9, 1940 in Liverpool, England, was much more than just a musician. As a leader of the Beatles, he revolutionized music and culture worldwide. Beyond his musical genius, Lennon was also an author, graphic artist, and a solo recording artist who collaborated extensively with Yoko Ono on various art projects. Lennon's upbringing was marked by challenges. Raised by working-class parents who married briefly and late in life, they struggled to understand and nurture their quick-witted and sensitive son. However, Lennon's life came to a tragic end on December 8, 1980. That day, outside his luxurious New York apartment building, Lennon graciously signed copies of his latest album, Double Fantasy, for fans, unaware that among them was his future assailant. Mark David Chapman, a deranged fan, waited for Lennon to return home. When Lennon arrived later that evening, Chapman fatally shot him 4 times at close range. The news of Lennon's murder spread rapidly, shocking and devastating millions of fans worldwide. Chapman made no attempt to flee and was arrested on the spot. In court, he pleaded guilty to the murder of the rock legend. To this day, Chapman remains incarcerated for his crime.
This evening, John Lennon arrived at the emergency room at the Roosevelt Hospital. He was dead at the time of his arrival.
19. Peter Tosh. In a chilling night at his Jamaican home, Peter Tosh faced a tragedy that would shock the reggae world. Peter Tosh, born on October 19, 1944, in Grange Hill, Jamaica, was not only a talented singer-songwriter, but also a pivotal figure in the history of reggae music. He co-founded the Wailers, a band that would become iconic in the genre alongside Bob Marley and Bunny Wailer. As one of the biggest reggae artists in history, Peter Tosh forged a legendary career. Tosh's contributions to the Wailers were profound, shaping the band's early sound and message. Together with Bob Marley and Bunny Wailer, Tosh played a crucial role in albums like Catch a Fire and Burnin', which solidified the Wailers' place in music history. In 1974, Tosh departed from the Wailers to pursue his solo career, releasing his groundbreaking album Legalize It in 1976. The album's title track became an anthem for the legalization of marijuana, a cause Tosh passionately advocated for throughout his life. Tragically, on September 11, 1987, Peter Tosh's life was cut short in a brutal attack at his Jamaican home. A gang of 3 men broke into his residence seeking money. When Tosh explained he had no cash at home, they grew violent and tortured him and several others for hours. The ordeal ended in tragedy when the assailants opened fire, killing Tosh and 2 others while also injuring several more. Peter Tosh's legacy as a musician and activist remains indelible. His powerful baritone voice and his commitment to social justice through songs like Get Up, Stand Up, co-written by Bob Marley, and Stop That Train continue to inspire generations of listeners worldwide.
Everything that is deadly upon creation invented, arranged to assassinate those who speak the truth.
18. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye's tumultuous relationship with his father would end in a shocking, tragic twist. Marvin Gaye, born on April 2, 1939 in Washington, D.C., U.S., was a pioneering figure in American soul music, known for his smooth vocals and profound influence on popular music of the 1970s. Marvin Gaye's career was marked by unparalleled success and artistic innovation. He rose to fame with a string of hits that defined the soul genre, including How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You, It Takes Two, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, and Sexual Healing. His music not only topped charts, but also reflected his personal and social concerns, making him a beloved figure among fans worldwide. However, behind the scenes, Marvin Gaye faced significant personal struggles, particularly with his father, Marvin Gaye Sr. Their relationship was fraught with tension, exacerbated by Gaye Sr.'s disapproval of his son's career choices and lifestyle. This strained dynamic erupted tragically on April 1st, 1984. In a heated argument involving Gaye, his father, and his mother, the situation escalated to violence. Marvin Gaye Sr., a Christian minister with a history of altercations with his son dating back to Marvin's childhood, retrieved a .38 pistol during the confrontation. In a shocking act, he fatally shot Marvin Gaye in the heart and then fired again at point-blank range, leading to Marvin's immediate death just 1 day shy of his 45th birthday. The murder of Marvin Gaye sent shockwaves through the music industry and beyond, marking a tragic end to a brilliant career and a life filled with promise. Marvin Gaye Sr. was convicted of voluntary manslaughter and received a suspended sentence of 6 years along with 5 years of probation, reflecting the complexity and sorrow surrounding this devastating loss.
You ready to start your tour again? Yes, you said you're going to Virginia?
Yes, that's right. And I'm all healthy and feeling great and all full of liquids.
17. Dimebag Darrell Abbott. On stage with his new band, Dimebag Darrell faced a fan whose obsession turned deadly. Darrell Lance Abbott, born on August 20th, 1966, was an iconic figure in heavy metal music, renowned for his exceptional guitar skills and influential contributions to bands like Pantera and Damageplan. Known affectionately as Dimebag Darrell, Abbott rose to prominence as the guitarist of Pantera, a band he co-founded with his brother Vinnie Paul. Pantera achieved immense success in the heavy metal scene throughout the 1990s, becoming a staple with albums like Cowboys from Hell, Vulgar Display of Power, and Far Beyond Driven. However, tensions within the band eventually led to its dissolution in 2003, prompting Abbott to form Damageplan. In 2004, Damageplan released their debut album and embarked on a tour to support its launch. Tragically, on December 8th of that year, during a performance at the Al Rosa Villa nightclub in Columbus, Ohio, a horrifying incident unfolded. A disturbed individual named Nathan Gale stormed the stage and opened fire, targeting Darrell Abbott. In a senseless act of violence, Gale shot Abbott multiple times, resulting in the guitarist's tragic death at the age of 38. 3 other people lost their lives that night before Gale himself was fatally shot by a responding police officer.
It was a heartfelt goodbye as thousands of people paid tribute to murdered guitarist Dimebag Darrell Abbott. The Arlington-born musician was shot during a show last week.
16. Rusty Day. From rock legend to a violent end in his own home, Rusty Day's final chapter was shrouded in mystery. Rusty Day, born Russell Edward Davidson on December 29, 1945, was a versatile American rock singer known for his collaborations with iconic bands like Cactus, the Amboy Dukes, and Steve Gaines. Day's journey in music began in earnest when he joined Ted Nugent in the Amboy Dukes in 1969, taking over from John Drake. His tenure with the band produced the album Migration before he moved on to join Cactus. Cactus, featuring bassist Tim Bogert and drummer Carmine Appice from Vanilla Fudge, alongside Jim McCarty, showcased Day's powerful vocals across 3 albums. Despite his contributions, Day was dismissed from the band in early 1972. Although Cactus disbanded later that year, Day briefly resurrected the group in 1976. Tragedy struck 6 years later on June 3, 1982, when Rusty Day, his 11-year-old son, his dog, and houseguest Garth McRae were brutally murdered in his home. The incident, reportedly stemming from a botched drug deal, remains unsolved officially. Many speculate that Ron Sanders, a guitarist and Day's acquaintance involved in drugs, was the perpetrator. Sanders took his own life 6 weeks after Day's murder, leaving the case unresolved. Despite the tragic end to his life, Rusty Day's legacy in rock music endures. In 1979, he formed the Rusty Day Band, collaborating with guitarist Mike Owings from Jacksonville, Florida. Owings, just 20 at the time, had recently departed Lizzie Borden, a band he was in with Bob Gaines, brother of Steve Gaines. 15. King Curtis. A routine encounter outside his Manhattan apartment would lead to a tragic, fatal altercation for King Curtis. King Curtis was a legendary saxophonist and bandleader who left an indelible imprint on R&B, jazz, and rock. The list of artists with whom he worked is long and impressive, including Aretha Franklin, Jimi Hendrix, Buddy Holly, Waylon Jennings, and the Coasters. Those collaborations, along with his solo work, made King Curtis a musical force to be reckoned with. On August 12, 1971, Curtis got into a dispute with a man named Juan Montanez, who was loitering outside the musician's Manhattan apartment. Montanez stabbed Curtis, who died in the hospital the next morning. Curtis Montgomery was born in Fort Worth, Texas, the son of Ethel Montgomery, and was adopted with his sister Josephine Allen, died 2019, by Josie and William Owsley. Curtis attended I.M. Terrell High School and studied and performed music with schoolmate Ornette Coleman. Curtis took inspiration from saxophonists Lester Young, Louis Jordan, Illinois Jacquet, Earl Bostic, and Gene Ammons. Known for his syncopated and percussive style, he was both versatile and powerful as a musician. He put together a group during his time as a session musician that included Richard T., Cornell Dupree, Jerry Jemmett, and Bernard Purdy. "14. Rhett Forrester. Rhett Forrester's journey from rock stardom to an unexpected end began with a fateful night. Heavy metal band Riot enjoyed some moderate success in the late 70s and early 80s, including touring as the main support for Sammy Hagar. In 1981, singer Guy Speranza departed the group and was replaced by a young rising vocalist named Rhett Forrester. His first album with the band was 1982's Restless Breed, and Riot seemed poised for further heavy metal success thanks to tours with Rainbow, Scorpions, UFO, and later Kiss. However, Forrester's erratic behavior made things difficult, and he was out of the group following 1983's Born in America. Roughly a decade later, Forrester was shot and killed during a botched carjacking in Atlanta. He was 37 years old. Forrester was born on September 22, 1956 in Tucker, Georgia. His mother was a ballroom dance instructor. He started to develop his trademark voice in high school at the Sanford Naval Academy when he began taking vocal lessons. After graduation, he moved to South Carolina where he began playing in local bands. In the late 1970s, Forrester joined forces with two former members of Illinois act Roller, guitarist Russ Shirley and bassist vocalist Kevin Lee, and drummer Jim Schroeder to form Hitman. The band stayed together for about a year, playing around the Georgia State area. Forrester's big break came while he was with a New York cover band named Rachel, when he successfully auditioned to replace the departing Guy Speranza in Riot.
Roger, the clock is operating. We're underway.
13. Kenny Richards. Behind the drum kit, Kenny Richards faced a fate that would shock his bandmates and fans alike. Kenny Richards was the original drummer for glam metal band Autograph. He was behind the kit for much of the group's heyday, including their 1984 hit single, Turn Up the Radio. Richards left the band in 1988 and went on to work with the band Dirty White Boy. He eventually withdrew from the music industry, only occasionally contributing to other artists' work or playing shows. In April 2017, Richards was found dead in his home. He was reportedly the victim of a drug-related murder. However, a killer has never been arrested or identified. Kenny Richards was born in 1956 in Des Moines, Iowa, but spent his high school years in Village Park, California. As a youth, he learned to play the piano and picked up the drums. Rather than a one-man Steve Plunkett show, Autograph began in late 1983 as a complete five-piece band, with songwriter and guitarist Steve Plunkett, who had recently left the band Silver Condor. Plunkett then began playing and recording his own material with a group of his musician friends, most of whom had previously played with him in other bands. On lead guitar was Steve Lynch, who had played with Plunkett in the band Looker. 12. Gary Driscoll. Gary Driscoll's contribution to rock was marred by a sudden and mysterious departure. John Gary Driscoll was an American R&B-style rock drummer who performed in a number of successful bands from the 1960s until his unsolved murder. Drummer Gary Driscoll began working with Ronnie James Dio in 1965. Their band together evolved into Elf, which released a trio of albums between 1972 and 1975. The group then disbanded as its members joined with Deep Purple guitarist Ritchie Blackmore to form the band Rainbow. Driscoll played on the group's first album, but was dismissed shortly afterward. Blackmore was reportedly not a fan of his playing. The drummer bounced through a few other bands, but had largely left the music industry by the mid-80s. On June 8, 1987, Driscoll went to Ithaca, New York to visit a friend who was also a drug dealer. When an angry customer showed up at the home and encountered Driscoll, he beat the musician mercilessly. The drummer was stabbed and shot and died in the home's basement. The man who was arrested for his murder was eventually set free due to a dispute over evidence and possible police tampering. Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke's musical legacy took a dark turn that no one saw coming. Regarded as one of the most influential singers of all time, Sam Cooke released 29 singles that charted in the US Top 40 during his legendary career. Among them, Chain Gang, You Send Me, and Twistin' the Night Away. Cooke was killed on December 11, 1964, and the circumstances surrounding his death have been called into question. That night, he went to the Hacienda Motel in South Central Los Angeles with a female acquaintance named Elisa Boyer. At some point in the night, Cooke exited the room looking for Boyer, at which point he encountered the motel's manager, Bertha Franklin, who shot and killed him. Boyer claimed later that the singer had been sexually assaulting her and that she escaped the room with her and Cooke's belongings prior to the shooting. However, inconsistencies in her story led many to believe that she was trying to rob or extort the singer. Meanwhile, Franklin said she acted in self-defense, another story which has been questioned in the years since. Some have even suggested a broader scheme in which Cooke was kidnapped and taken hostage in the motel. There was no FBI investigation into the killing, and Franklin's actions were ultimately ruled as justifiable homicide.
After she shoots him and he proclaims, "Lady, you shot me," he still comes after her, whereupon she grabs some kind of a large stick, and it was a large broom handle or something, and she proceeds to beat him until he collapses.
10. Charles Miller. Charles Miller's life took a tragic turn in circumstances that would forever haunt his band. Charles William Miller was an American musician best known as the saxophonist and flutist for the multicultural California funk band War. That voice you hear on War's classic 1970 track Lowrider? That's Charles Miller, the band's saxophonist and flutist. During his long tenure with the group, the multi-instrumentalist contributed to the band's first 13 albums. On June 4th, 1980, just 2 days after his 41st birthday, Miller was stabbed to death in Los Angeles during an attempted robbery. Miller recorded with various groups such as Senior Soul on Senior Soul Plays Funky Favorites, 1968, and It's Your Thing, 1969, both on Double Shot Records. He participated in recording sessions with the Ray Charles Band and toured with the Debonaires, Brenton Wood, Senior Soul, and Afro Blues Quintet +1. In the summer of 1969, Miller was in Hollywood at the First Studio Instrument Rentals, located on Santa Monica Boulevard and Vine Street, when he met Harold Brown, Howard E. Scott, and Papa D. Allen. Together, they formed the band Night Shift. Eric Burden and Lee Oscar later joined the band after watching Miller and the Night Shift play at the club Ragdoll in North Hollywood. 9. Felix Pappalardi. Felix Pappalardi's influence on music came to a sudden and shocking end in his own home. Felix A. Pappalardi Jr. was an American music producer, songwriter, vocalist, and bassist. He is best known as the bassist and co-lead vocalist of the band Mountain, whose song Mississippi Queen peaked at number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100 and has become a classic rock radio staple. As the bassist and co-vocalist of the band Mountain, Felix Pappalardi was a key figure in 70s rock. The group's heavy blues rock sound became hugely influential, while their song Mississippi Queen remains a beloved classic. Pappalardi further added to his rock resume as a producer, most notably working with Cream on 3 of their 4 albums. Yet, as the 80s dawned, Pappalardi's career was in decline. So too was his marriage to Gail Collins, as the rocker had found love with a new romance. After an argument, Collins, who was on drugs at the time, shot Pappalardi once in the neck, killing him in their East Side Manhattan apartment. She eventually pled guilty to criminally negligent homicide. Collins was released from jail in 1985, 2 years after Pappalardi's death.
When the wagon leaves the city for
8. Terry Knight. Terry Knight's journey from manager to a shocking incident that stunned the rock world. Terry Knight had several different roles in the music industry, beginning with his stint as a radio DJ in the early 60s. In 1965, he formed a band of his own, Terry Knight and the Pack, which scored a pair of national hits. Knight next pursued a solo career before transitioning to become a producer. At one point, he was in talks with the Beatles, even sitting in for some of the White Album sessions. That partnership never came to fruition, but Knight later became the manager and producer for Grand Funk Railroad. He helped steer the band to fame, but the relationship turned tumultuous as Grand Funk claimed Knight stole money from the group. Knight continued working with other artists, but eventually left the music business. Then, in 2004, tragedy struck. Knight's daughter and her boyfriend, Donald A. Fair, were in the midst of a heated argument. When Knight intervened, Fair stabbed him multiple times. The killer later claimed he was on meth at the time of the murder. Knight died at the age of 61, and Fair was imprisoned for life.
No matter who they are, and no matter how different they might be, always runs across the same problem.
7. Philip Wilson. Philip Wilson faced a fate that no musician could foresee, changing everything. Philip Wilson was a top drummer of his generation in jazz, blues, and rock. He was born Philip Sanford Wilson in St. Louis, Missouri in 1941. He rose to prominence in avant-garde jazz at the beginning of the 1960s. His recording debut was made in 1962 with the soul jazz organist Sam Lazar's album, Playback. However, he began to move into avant-garde music during the mid-60s as a member of Art Ensemble of Chicago and also with Roscoe Mitchell. Paul Butterfield approached Wilson to join his band. Drummer Philip Wilson joined the Paul Butterfield Blues Band in 1967. The band recorded 3 albums during his tenure: The Resurrection of Pig Boy Crabshaw in 1967, In My Own Dream 1968, and Keep On Moving 1969. Wilson was also behind the kit during Paul Butterfield Blues Band's performance at Woodstock. The drummer moved on to his own group, Full Moon, in the early 70s. He also became a prolific session musician, working with many artists on the famous Stax record label. In 1992, Wilson was murdered in New York, allegedly part of a robbery gone wrong. After coverage on the TV show America's Most Wanted, Wilson's killer, Marvin Slater, was brought to justice. 6. Roger Troutman. Roger Troutman's innovative career took an unexpected turn that would shock the music industry. Born in Hamilton, Ohio, Troutman was the fourth of 9 children. A graduate of Central State University, his first band was called the Crusaders. However, they are not to be confused with the jazz group featuring Joe Sample and Wilton Felder. Troutman's band played in Cincinnati and recorded a single, Busted Surfboard Seminole. The band members were Rick Shoney, Roy Beck, David Spitzmiller, and Denny Neibold. Funk pioneer Roger Troutman gained fame as the founder and chief songwriter for the band Zapp. The group released a string of gold records in the 70s and enjoyed a close working relationship with George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic. Troutman went on to have a successful solo career, including his 1987 hit single, I Want to Be Your Man. He later enjoyed a further career resurgence, contributing to hip-hop material, most notably Tupac Shakur's 1995 song, California Love. On April 25, 1999, Troutman was found shot outside of his recording studio in Dayton, Ohio. He died at a nearby hospital later that morning. His brother Larry, who had also been in the band Zapp, was found dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound a few blocks away. Authorities believe Larry shot Roger, drove away, then turned the gun on himself.
When I first heard it, I said, that's that Troutman sound there.
That shit is a trip, man. Hey, what can I say? Do you want carpet? I'm the man that can say your remnants. Doesn't matter. Call me, no money down.
5. Mia Zapata. Mia Zapata's vibrant voice and promising career were cut short in a tragedy that shook her community. Mia Catherine Zapata was an American musician who was the lead singer for the Seattle punk band The Gits. Zapata was raised in Louisville, Kentucky, and attended high school at Presentation Academy. Zapata learned how to play the guitar and the piano by age 9. As the lead singer of punk rock band The Gits, Mia Zapata was a notable part of Seattle's 90s music scene. The band released their debut album, Frenching the Bully, in 1992. With their popularity growing in the grunge scene and beyond, the Gits began work on their sophomore LP in 1993. Later that year, while walking home from a local music venue, Zapata was gruesomely raped and strangled to death. Her body was found around 3:30 a.m. on July 7th. There were no witnesses for the crime, and for years her murder went unsolved. Many Seattle bands, including Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden, raised money to hire a private investigator on the case. Despite this, Zapata's killer, Jesus Mezquia, wasn't brought to justice until 2003, when DNA evidence helped solve the crime. He was sentenced to 36 years in prison. 4. Albert Jackson Jr. Albert Jackson Jr.'s musical journey ended abruptly in a way that no one expected. As the founding drummer of Booker T and the MGs, Albert Jackson Jr. earned a reputation as one of music's greatest timekeepers. Jackson was also a prolific session musician, playing with Elvis Presley, Otis Redding, Bill Withers, Eric Clapton, and Rod Stewart, among many others. Booker T and the MGs were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992. Sadly, Jackson wasn't around for the celebration. In the early morning hours of October 1st, 1975, the drummer was returning home, having watched the Thrilla in Manila on the big screen at the Mid-South Coliseum. As Jackson entered his house, he was accosted by burglars who tied him up and forced him to the ground. The drummer was shot 5 times in the back, killed in his own home. His estranged wife Barbara was also at the scene and had allegedly been taken captive by the robbers as well. She freed herself and told police what happened, but the circumstances surrounding Jackson's murder remain mysterious. Nothing was taken from the home, and the drummer's body still had his wallet and jewelry. Conspiracy theories suggested that Barbara, who had shot her husband the previous year during an argument, may have been involved in the murder. Then there was Stax Records, the company Jackson worked for, which was embroiled in federal indictments at the time of the killing. Some suggested the drummer was murdered to keep him silent. Regardless, Jackson's killer was never brought to justice.
Who is Al Jackson Jr.? Otis Redding referred to him as the greatest drummer in the world. Other musicians call him the human timekeeper.
3. Lloyd Mooseman Roberts III. Lloyd Roberts III's life as a bassist took a tragic turn that rocked his bandmates and fans. Lloyd Mooseman Roberts III was an American musician best known as a bassist for the rap metal band Body Count. Roberts was a key writer in the early years of Body Count. Mooseman was a high school friend of Ice-T, and the two bonded over the shared love of heavy metal. After Ice-T made a name for himself as a rapper, he returned to metal by forming the band Body Count. Mooseman was the group's bassist and backing vocalist, playing on their first 2 albums. Body Count toured consistently in the early 90s, including a stint on the Lollapalooza Festival. In 2000, Mooseman recorded tracks for Iggy Pop's album Beat 'Em Up. The bassist would be dead before the album's release. On February 22, 2001, Mooseman was killed at a drive-by shooting. Roberts was born in Bernice, Louisiana. He attended Crenshaw High School in South Central Los Angeles, where he played in his high school band, met and became close friends with Ice-T and D-Rock, Dennis Miles, with whom he would eventually form Body Count. Roberts recorded the album Beat 'Em Up with Iggy Pop before being killed in a drive-by shooting in February 2001, in which he was not the intended target. He was 38 years old. 2. John Whitehead. John Whitehead's impact on music took a dark turn that no one could have predicted. John Cavitus Whitehead was an American singer and songwriter. He was best known as one of the key members of the Philadelphia International record label and was one half of the successful team of McFadden and Whitehead with Gene McFadden. McFadden and Whitehead wrote many hits for Philadelphia International artists, including the OJs and Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, and had their own hit with Ain't No Stoppin' Us Now in 1979. He was the father of both members of the Whitehead Brothers, a mid-1990s duo. As one half of McFadden and Whitehead, John Whitehead scored a big hit with the 1979 tune Ain't No Stoppin' Us Now. However, the R&B duo were even more successful as songwriters for other artists, penning tunes for Gloria Gaynor, the OJs, and the Jacksons, among others. In 2004, Whitehead was outside his home in Philadelphia, standing by a man who was fixing his car. Unknown assailants shot and killed the singer, possibly in a case of mistaken identity. The other man was wounded but survived. The case remains unsolved.
Around all of the world with Otis Redding at one point?
Yes, we did. And then when he died, that's when we came back to Philadelphia and put ourselves in the hands of Gamble and Huff.
All right, to become stars in front, right? And nothing happened.
1. Cornell Gunter. Cornell Gunter's legacy in music was marred by a tragic twist that changed everything. Cornell Gunter was an American rhythm and blues singer most active in the 1950s and 1960s. He was born in Coffeyville, Kansas. As a member of the Platters and the Coasters, Cornell Gunter sang on some of the most recognizable tunes of the 50s, including Yakety Yak, Charlie Brown, and Poison Ivy. He later split off and formed his own Coasters group, often billed as the Fabulous Coasters, and enjoyed a successful touring career which spanned decades. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of the Coasters in 1987. 3 years later, while sitting in his car at a Las Vegas intersection, Gunter got into an argument with an unidentified man. The assailant shot the singer to death, then fled. the murder remains unsolved. Gunther was an original member of the Platters. He had recorded with the yet unnamed Platters, singing backup on Big J. McNeely's recording Nervous Man Nervous on Federal Records in 1953. Gunther was also a member of the Flares and the Coasters. The title song from the 1957 Susan Oliver film The Green-Eyed Blonde was sung by Gunther. Will Dub Jones and Gunther joined the Coasters as replacements for Bobby Nunn and Leon Hughes in early 1958. After Gunther left the Coasters, he toured with Dinah Washington. In 1961, he was part of a group called Dee's Gentlemen, which featured future members of the Dells, Charles Barksdale and Johnny Carter, as well as Richard Harris and William Herndon.
All that garbage outside. Boy, you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak. Don't talk back.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through the tragic stories of these music icons. If you found this video compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more intriguing tales. Check out our channel for more captivating stories from music history.